Welcome to another edition of the Teed Up Basketball Podcast. It's me, Aaron Quinn, here with a kind of a live emergency edition of the podcast. We're here to discuss the Eric Bledsoe trade to the Milwaukee Bucks. So it just came over the interwebs here. I was just hanging out, having some morning coffee, getting some work done, and look over on my Twitter, and there was a Woj bomb there. ESPN breaking maybe their social media policy a little bit. Breaking news: Suns finalizing a deal for Eric Bledsoe to head to the Milwaukee Bucks. First, we weren't sure of what the stipulations of the deal were going to be. What were the Bucks sending for a deal like this? Talked about it a little bit in the previous podcast the other night, that I didn't think the Suns had a ton of leverage in this trade, obviously, with the stuff Bledsoe said. Apparently they had more leverage than I thought, but they end up picking up an expiring contract in Greg Monroe and a first round pick. So not a bad haul for a guy who you clearly sent home, wasn't going to play for you, and not a bad move for the Milwaukee Bucks, who pick up a huge asset for their insert right into their starting lineup. Right now they're struggling a little bit, Milwaukee. Even with Giannis playing as well as he is, they're not winning some of the games that maybe they should be winning. Right here, I mean, Bledsoe's just a nice piece. I mean, he's a 13 points per game career scorer, but that doesn't really speak to all of it here. Let's see. A couple years ago, 2016, he was a 21 points per game, 20 points per game. If he can get back to that with Milwaukee, I mean, that's a huge pickup for this team, and an Eastern Conference that is looking like it's more open than people maybe suspected it would be going into the season. Something that we've talked about a bunch on this show is the lack of parity in the league, that people assume there's a lack of parity, but it actually looks like there's a lot more of it than people wanted to give any credit to go into the season. So here we are, we're about 10, 12 games into the season, and we got a huge move again out of Phoenix, moving Eric Bledsoe to the Milwaukee Bucks for Greg Monroe and a first round pick. I love the deal for the Bucks. I think the Bucks needed just one other piece to kind of take some of the pressure off Giannis. And Giannis is playing out of his mind, having a great season, MVP caliber start to the year, but he can't get it done by himself. They have great role players over there in Milwaukee. I like what they've done, but they just don't have another guy when the game's on the line that you can rely on for scoring. And this gives them so many options, for different types of lineups. Giannis himself gives you a ton of options, right? He can play every single position, but this gives you a little bit more flexibility, especially at the guard spot. So let's take a look here. How long? I mean, he's locked down for another year and then becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2019. So they got him for this season and next season. So this is nice. The Bucks, they may not compete for a title this season. They're going to be tough to handle in the playoffs, but they're building something over there. And this is just a really nice addition to what they've got going on. Here's one thing that I really think this move puts a lot more pressure on Jason Kidd, right? I said it in previous podcasts. I think Jason Kidd should be on the hot seat in Milwaukee. I think that team's got a lot more talent than he's been able to. They're more talented than they've shown, especially this year. They've lost some games that I really think they should have won. And let's take a look here. They've lost more games than I think they should have at this point in the season. And Jason Kidd just has blown some things at the end of games. Just his lineups are a little off to me. So this, I think, puts him a little bit more on the hot seat. We'll see. Maybe he's not on the hot seat at all, but I think it should put him a little bit more, because now he's got another additional piece here, a possibly all-star caliber guard to go along with Giannis. And it takes some pressure off the rest of the team, too. Now these guys don't have to feel like they have to be top scorers when a lot of them aren't. Let's take a look here. Another great thing about this trade is the perfect timing, right? This is showing the Bucks and their team and their fans that they are in it to really make a move now and next year. You got the Cavs struggling. It's another thing we've talked about a lot on this podcast. The Cavs are struggling right now to string together any type of consistency on defense. I think they're fine offensively for the most part. I don't think they're where they want to be, but I think defense is clearly the problem, but they're struggling against teams that they shouldn't be struggling against. They're playing pretty well actually against the better top tier teams in the league, but they're under 500 for the year. So while the Cavs are struggling, these other teams got to smell the blood in the water, right? They got to sense it and know it. And the Celtics are doing a great job, right? They're on a 9-game winning streak. They look like a title contender right now. Some of these other teams, though, are just kind of tripping along while the Cavs are also tripping along, right? And so you need to really create some separation if you're those other teams. In order to do that, this for the Bucks might be that thing that kind of pushes them into that top tier of the East teams. Right now, they're floating around with the Raptors and the Wizards and some of those middle tier playoff teams in the East. Hopefully this is the thing they need. It might not be a quick turnaround, but hopefully this is the thing they need to push them into that top tier conversation with the Celtics, with potentially the Cavs if they turn it around and get going on defense. So we'll see here. I think this is the kind of move it's an aggressive move for them. I think it makes tons of sense. I think it's great for Giannis. I think it's great for the Bucks. I'm really excited about this move for them. Let's take a look at the Bucks roster now. Pulling it up here. I apologize for the delay. I just saw the trade go down and I had a little time here. I figured we'd go with a little bit of an emergency podcast. This won't be the weekly podcast, you guys. This is just an extra bonus podcast. I'm also live on Periscope right now. So if you can't get to me on YouTube and you're just on your phone, I'm over here. Follow me on Periscope. Trying to do that a little bit in between the podcast because there's so much happening in the NBA daily. Sometimes I want to give my thoughts on a game and I don't want to wait till the podcast a week later to give my thoughts on that, or I'll forget something or it's irrelevant by the time that I get to the podcast. So come over, check us out on Periscope. We're going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing that once in a while. Just something to keep an eye out on if you enjoy talking NBA. I'll be over there too, so if you have questions, hit me up there. Always feel free to come over to YouTube, hit me up in the chat box there. I'd love to get some live interaction going with you guys. So right now, actually, tonight's a huge game. We got tonight, 6 Central Time, Milwaukee Bucks versus the Cleveland Cavaliers, 4-5 versus 4-6. So this might be an opportunity for them to separate before Bledsoe gets in, right? If they can come out here and really put it to the Cavs tonight, who are struggling, this is going to be interesting. Game's in Cleveland. This is a big game. It's a division game. So keep an eye out on that one tonight, guys. Again, that's 6 Eastern or 6 Central Time. So Bucks, Cavs tonight, kind of setting some of the tone early on here in the Eastern Conference. Teams trying to play catch up to the Celtics. Who's going to step into that top tier with the Celtics right now? Because there's a clear separation. I don't think the Magic are legit. I don't think they're really in that top tier. I'm not really sold on the Pistons being in that top tier. I think those teams may be able to stay into the bottom middle half of the playoff talk, which I didn't think they would at the start of the season. But I don't see them remaining in that top tier with the Celtics. I do think the Bucks have the potential to do that. Can the Bucks beat teams tonight like Cleveland at home? That's going to be huge. But we'll see. I'm not really looking to talk about that game. I just pulled up their website and saw that they're playing tonight. Let's take a look at this roster, though, guys. I mean, this has given Jason Kidd a ton of options to play with, especially late in games. Giannis gives you a ton of options. Like I said, he can play all the positions on the court, so he gives you a ton of options. He can handle the ball. Thon Maker gives you a lot of options, too. I don't necessarily like the idea of maybe him late in games. Middleton gives you a lot of options. Another great thing for them is at some point here, they're going to get Jabari Parker back. Let's see if we got any news on Parker's injury while I'm going through this. Yeah, I mean, at some point in the season, I don't see anything on when they're going to get him back. And I'm sorry I don't think he's back yet. At some point here this season, they're going to get Jabari Parker back, I would think. That gives them even more options, guys. Imagine this team with a healthy Jabari Parker. We haven't seen it in a long time. The guy's kind of struggled throughout his career to stay healthy already. If he can come back, that just gives them even more options, another scoring threat. So you got you got Eric Bledsoe, Giannis, Jabari, Middleton. Middleton, if Jabari comes back healthy, Middleton now becomes your fourth scoring option. That's kind of where he should be. He doesn't need to be the second scoring option. So that's a huge benefit to this team. Who else do we got? Tony Snell's playing well. I'm a big Bulls fan. I didn't love the Tony Snell pick. I liked it at the time, but he just never really was able to achieve what the Bulls thought he was going to be. But he's playing nice off the bench right now for the Bucks. So that's another big one for them. Delhi, not a huge fan. Malcolm Brogdon, this takes a lot of pressure off of Brogdon, guys. I thought maybe he was going to be in on this trade. Huge that the Bucks were able to keep him and get Bledsoe without having to move a young piece like that. I mean, I think the Bucks need to get a lot of credit here for moving an expiring contract in Greg Monroe. The first pick doesn't matter if you're playing for this year, right? You're playing for the next 2 years. So not a huge loss there. I know Bill Simmons brought up at whether or not it's a protected pick. I don't really care because this shows me that the Bucks are in it now to win. So the fact that they were able to keep Brogdon, this gives them a little bit of flexibility there too. They can start him. They can start Bledsoe and he at the 1 and 2, or they can have him coming off the bench, which might be nice for him, take a little pressure off. I don't think he's ready yet to be top tier scorer in the league. Give him a couple more years to develop into a nice piece. This takes a ton of pressure off of him, allows him to just kind of play a little more freely, less pressure. That is nothing but a benefit to a young guy like that. Henson gives you nice flexibility. So I don't have anyone really chatting in the chat box or on Periscope, but on Twitter, get at me, guys. I would love to hear what your thoughts are for how Jason Kidd's going to use this new piece into his roster. What is that fourth quarter going to look like when they're out on the court in a close game? He has so many options. What's he going to do with it? And I also want to hear your opinions. Does this put Jason Kidd even more on the hot seat if the Bucks don't find immediate success here rolling into the month of November, December? If they don't really separate and rise to the top, say Cleveland continues to struggle and the Bucks are just kind of floating around the middle of the Eastern Conference, does Jason Kidd's seat get hotter and hotter? They've clearly put a lot of talent around them. They're clearly a top contending playoff team. They have an MVP caliber player in the East. If that can't get it done, then you gotta look at the coach, right? I don't think it's the players. I don't think it's the front office. They're clearly trying to put talent around to get the job done. So does Jason Kidd does his seat start to get a little bit hotter because they added talent? That is something to keep an eye on. I think it does. I thought Jason Kidd should be on the hot seat now, going back to last year, and this year he hasn't done anything to change my mind on that early on in the season. I don't think they should be a 4-5 team. I think they should be winning more games than they have. I think tonight's a good test, even though Bledsoe is not going to be there tonight. I think it's a good test against a struggling Cleveland team. Cleveland's played well against good teams. They've played poorly against bad teams. What do they do tonight against a nice Bucks team? Can the Bucks start to create that separation, guys? If they can't, when Bledsoe comes back, when Bledsoe arrives and they can't create any separation in the Eastern Conference, I'm telling you, Jason Kidd's seat's got to get hot. It has to. They've got everything else in place to make a push here. And these other Eastern Conference teams, man, they got to be on notice too, right? The Wizards, Bradley Beal talked about how they're one of the best teams in the league. Well, now's the time to prove it because the other teams are getting better and you're kind of floating around right now. Not really, John Wall's injury definitely hurts him, but are you guys able to take the next step? Are the Raptors? I haven't seen anything to me to say the Raptors are a top 3 team in the East. Are they? We'll see. I think this is a great opportunity for those teams in that middle tier. Maybe Detroit can prove me wrong. Maybe they are legitimate. I don't think they are. I think they're going to start to slide off. I think the Magic are definitely not legitimate. I think they had a nice hot start to the year. I don't think they can maintain that success. I don't think Aaron Gordon's going to be able to be Blake Griffin for the entire season. So let's take a look at that in the next couple of weeks, see how this top of the East starts to shake out. I'm really worried about some of those teams that I mentioned, not so worried about the Bucks. I think this is a great move for them. I'm really excited I don't have anything in the chat room, so I'm going to kind of wrap it up there with this emergency podcast. But I just wanted to kind of take a second out to talk about this, kind of share my views before the day goes on and you see everybody else on Twitter giving their views. My view doesn't really matter all that much, I'm sure. As for instance, I thought Greg Monroe was going to be a huge move for the Bucks a couple years ago. Turns out I was wrong. That's pretty much a trend for me, being wrong about a lot of stuff. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Bucks are just going to kind of float around 500, but I don't think so. I think they're a team to keep an eye on. They're a team to be excited about. I think this only increases Giannis's value for the MVP race. So things to keep an eye on, guys. I appreciate if anybody did pop on the YouTube channel over here on Periscope. I see some hearts. I don't know. I can't really see how many people are watching right now, but I appreciate anybody that's coming, checking it out. A few more downloads on the podcast than I thought I would have. So appreciate anyone listening. That's super cool. Get at us. We're now, we're available on iTunes. We're available on Stitcher. We do the YouTube channel. I'm on Periscope. I'm trying to be everywhere to get the word out. So find us. We're on Twitter, Facebook. Just search Teed Up Podcast, or you can find me by my handle on Twitter. It's at TD_UP_podcast. So that's at Teed_Up_podcast. Find me over there. I'd love to get the conversation rolling a little bit more over on Twitter. You can find our Facebook page. It's Teed Up Podcast over there. I'm responding over there. So come have discussions if Facebook's your thing. I'm love to come talk to you there. Comment on our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, follow that. Come over here on Periscope and follow us. Stay posted for when we do go live, because it's going to happen in between podcasts. I'm just going to hop on Periscope and give you some of my thoughts on the current state of the NBA, some of the games. If I see a game that just blows me away, last night the Celtics did. They had a tough game against the Atlanta Hawks, were able to squeak it out and, again, continue to show their adversity. We'll get into that a little bit more in the podcast. I think I'm going to go live tomorrow for the official podcast. So, again, keep in mind, this is not the official podcast this week. This was just an emergency trade. Eric Bledsoe going to the Bucks for Greg Monroe and a first-round pick. So, big breaking news, guys. Other good news for me, I'm also on the Grandstand Sports Network, guys. So, go check them out. Follow them. It's Grandstand Sports Network. Check them out. It's fun. They have a ton of podcasts, all different sports, all different views, some super smart guys over there sharing. So if you're a big sports fan and you're looking for a little change of pace, I know here our media can be a little bit tough to digest sometimes. There's only one sports radio channel. So there's some guys that I follow on there that give me a different view of my sports teams over on the Grandstand Sports Network. I just pop it on while I'm hanging out at home or working or whatever. They got a nice little audio player that works online or on the web. So check it out, Grandstand Sports Network. I'm on there. Guys, that's it for me right now today. Again, follow me on Twitter. We'll be talking about this throughout the day. I appreciate all the support, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.